What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast, episode number 239. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Eichbrett, and joined with me is the captain, Mr. Andy Full. What's going on, dude?
Oh, just battling exhaustion, but it's the fishing life, so it's pretty grand.
In the wise words of my father, suck it up, Buttercup.
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
Hey, all I'm going to say, it's better to be exhausted and being a full-time guide than being stuck in that bank job you're in.
Yeah, that is true. I'm in a much better mental place. So
Andy's always happy, but this is a different version of Andy. Andy's now stress-free for the most part.
Yeah, it's pretty great feeling. Today I was doing my subcontracted pharmaceutical delivery drive, and I think I drove 210 miles just dropping off narcotics in nursing homes, so it's kind of fun. It's what do I have in here today? Because I don't know until they open it and sign it, and I'm like, oh, that's some pretty bad stuff. Good luck to those old ladies having to take that and sleep all the time. Those poor things.
Tyler agrees. He says you just suck it up.
Speaking of Tyler, I hope his back is doing better. He might be fishing with us Saturday, so that'll be good to see him after his back.
He said
he's had. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he'd see us there. So hopefully we do. And hopefully we spank you in the tournament.
I don't know.
I've never been to the lower. I've never been there. That'll be a first for me.
It's fun when it's on.
Yeah. So speaking of tournaments, and we will get into this a little bit deeper after our episode today, which for those obviously tuning in, we have Andrew Upshaw joining us tonight. We have a really cool episode. We're going to dive into a very interesting topic that is actually kind of relevant. I thought about this last week when we were talking with Andrew to get him on the show, and just so happened that this weekend's tournaments for both Andrew and I say Andrew, but Andy, it's going to be an interesting.
Did not go as planned.
I will try to say Andy throughout the episode so that you guys can specify between the two Andrews. But yeah, it's very relevant to our past weekend. Was pretty brutal. I think Andrew had. See, I'm already doing it. I'll say the captain had expected a much bigger bag. You and Destin had an insane practice in terms of finding some high percentage areas. And with my tournament, I was doing something really awesome. I was punching mats with New York in mid-September, which is pretty fun, and was in third place in day one, and day two fell to 10th. So that's a whole other story that we'll get into at the end of this episode. We won't take up too much time because we want to get Andrew on the show here. But I think there's a couple things we need to go over, and that is just some quick announcements. And it's that tomorrow we're going to be running another Hobie eyewear giveaway. So stay tuned to the Instagram. We'll be posting it up, kind of rules to get in, win yourself, really easy just to win some free nice shades from Hobie Eyewear.
Love mine. They're incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Sightmaster Pluses, can't beat them.
I actually, Deacon, when all of his buddies, he was staying with Hugh and Alex Redwine. It was Alex Redwine just made the Elite Series, and he was showing them the Sightmasters, and they were trying to snag them from him because I guess they had some shallow patterns for the opens, and they're like, we need these. So a little selfless plug for Hobie Eyewear. It's pretty cool. Those Sightmasters are ridiculous. But other than that, we had a video coming out on the YouTube tomorrow. Andrew and I's tournament video from a little while back, catching a whole bunch of largemouth. But dude, you got anything?
Epic meltdown in there, did you?
I'm actually still in the midst of editing it. It's been a long day getting back home and trying to get caught up in work. So now that you say it, I definitely will.
Just put it in the opening credits.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be just the start. But I think, dude, without further ado, we need to bring him on here. Mr. Andrew Upshaw. What's going on, dude?
Not much. How's it going, guys?
Good. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. Just having so much fun at Lake Dorman here in North Carolina. I can't imagine having any more fun than what I'm having right now. So
I don't sense any sarcasm in that.
No, I'm far from sarcastic. I've never been one of those people, so it's all good.
What do you, speaking of Norman, what do you think it's going to take a day to, one, get a cash a check, and then two, top 10?
Oh, cash a check, I have no idea, because it's the fishing is not very good. when you come to the South in that fall transition, that's late summer fall transition, it can be really, really tough. And that is exactly what we're dealing with here. And the fact is Norman is coming off like three weekends of big tournaments, so it's going to make it even tougher. So I think that if you can catch about 8 pounds, about 8 pounds a day, you're probably going to get paid or pretty close.
Ooh.
And if you can somehow catch you about 10 a day to 11 a day, you're going to make the top 10. And if you can catch about 12 to around that a day, you're going to win. So,
Dang.
it's bad. It's a lot different than coming from St. Lawrence River. I can promise you that.
That's like some Sabine River weights right there.
Yeah, it's just it has a lot of spotted bass in it, and right now they're long and lean and tiny, and so that it makes it really tough. So.
Good grief. Well, I hope you guys have a good tournament. I was talking with Pangrek today, and he had something very similar to that. Very low weights.
Yeah, it's just not good. I mean, the nice thing about it though is this is when you look at points for the Bassmaster Opens and trying to make the Elite Series and things. I really like these particular tournaments because a lot of times it causes a big flip flop as far as points go. There's going to be 200 boats in this tournament, so that absolutely opens that up quite a bit. So it makes it a lot more fun and a lot easier to make up ground. You know, I'm kind of a little blunder there at the St. Lawrence, so it allows me to try to possibly make up points if I have a good tournament. So,
heck yeah. Obviously, we're going to get into that a little bit. That's kind of the premise of this episode. We're going to be talking about, the bigger field tournaments and how to, practice, how to strategize your practice around. Like, I mean, at Oneida, you were there. It was 200 boats. It was over 200, wasn't it? Wasn't it like 208 or something like that?
Yeah.
Something insane.
That lake is terrible.
Yeah,
it was brutal. But basically, we're going to kind of get into kind of how to strategize your research, your practice, and your tournament for a big boat field like that. But before we get into that, dude, obviously it's your first time on the show, and something that Andy and I like to do is kind of get a background of how you started, because everyone always likes to hear the story of how people got started fishing. So kind of like take us back to the beginning of when you caught your first bass, like who got you into it? How'd you get into it? Full 9 yards.
I guess to take it back all the way, I hadn't really ever talked about that very much. I mean, I'd talk about like starting bass fishing and things like that, but I remember one moment very vividly. My brother and my dad were bass fishing, and I was really, really young. I think it was like second grade, and all I cared about was just netting minnows. That's all I wanted to do was just net minnows the entire time. I wasn't technically fishing, but I went to go net a catfish that I saw floating on the water. I was like, heck yeah, I'm going to catch this big catfish. It was attached to about a 3.5 to 4 foot water moccasin. And it was very interesting because I want to say a few times after that, it was so intriguing. We ended up killing the water moccasin because it came up on the land. But we, after that, a few weeks later, I went fishing with my dad, and I was just throwing a bobber and caught some nice crappie, and just kind of hooked me from there. But even then, I wasn't really hooked until I moved to Toledo Bend when I was younger. I want to say like 6th grade, 7th grade, and I just started fishing. We actually went white bass fishing, and I started fishing off the bank, and that was so much fun. And just kind of went from there. I went fishing with Tommy Martin, Bassmaster Classic champ. My dad actually coached both of his boys. My dad was a head football coach, and so he coached both Brian Martin and Blake Martin there in Hemphill. And so Tommy took me fishing, which was like the coolest thing ever. And literally like 3 weeks before I found out I was going fishing with him, and all I was casting was like a Zepco, but I didn't want to embarrass myself. So I literally in 3 weeks learned how to cast a bait casting reel all on my own, just so I wouldn't embarrass it too bad. So that kind of just exploded everything. And, I got in school and kind of went from there. So,
did you play football growing up?
I did. I was hardcore football player. I was even blessed enough to actually play in college a little bit. And after about 4 knee surgeries, I'm just about done with that. So
I hear
That's
that.
a good
dude.
reason.
yeah,
Good
it was a
reason
very
to
good reason.
retire.
I'm gonna tell you right now, it was my son, and I'm getting ready to post a video. I hope he's watching. I'm not sure if he is, but he had his very first football game over the weekend. He's only 6 years old. He's in first grade, and he's tiny, but he's literally the fastest kid I've ever seen at that age. And he's beating third graders in races. I mean, he's just blazing fast. And I'm like, golly, why wasn't I that athletic when I was a kid? I mean, I was fast. I was always really fast, but that kid's next level. And it's fun to watch him. And I missed his first game, and it just tore me apart not being able to see him. But he is really he takes after his mom and his dad. We were both speedsters growing up, and I know he'd blow our doors off if he went and raced us now. So.
Oh, jeez.
So you're saying he's the next? Yeah.
Oh, he loves to fish. Absolutely. And he's he's one of those kids that like everybody can be talking to him, and he's so super focused on what he does. It's really cool to watch. And I never had that dream of being a dad or anything like that, but I can tell you he is the coolest kid ever. Like, no doubt.
That's awesome.
The next Christian McCaffrey.
That would be awesome. But I mean, unfortunately, his mom's short. I'm short. I mean, he better be real fast if he's going to be something like that.
Yeah. I think Christian McCaffrey is only like 5'10". I think he's okay.
Yeah, but I'm only like 5'8", so he didn't come from big tall Gene lines. I can just tell you that.
Hey, Darren Sproles had a long career in the NFL, and he's like 5'5". So
and there's that.
I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, he might be. He might be.
There's always a chance. We have a question here from our good buddy John King. I don't know where he's coming with this, but he said, "Does Matt Pangrak have a name for his Traeger? If not, what should it be?" I don't know if there's an inside joke there or not, but I figured we'd throw it up there.
Yeah, no, there's no telling.
Well, dude, getting back to kind of like your roots. When did you start fishing tournaments? How did you kind of get introduced to that?
I actually started. Golly, I don't even remember what my first tournament was. But I remember what it was. I started in a club there in my neighborhood. We had this like neighborhood club that was only like 10 members, and we'd have a tournament every month or two. And I started fishing with that. And the first one I ever fished, I got second place. And I think the next one I fished, I won. And I got really hooked on the club deal. And I was like, what else can I fish? How can I make more money? Because it was about money. I mean, like I was a kid. I was 16 years old, 15 years old. So I just wanted to figure out a way to do that. Uh-oh, we got an echo.
Yeah, hold on. My headphones died. You keep talking. I'm going to mute myself for a second.
Okay, and I just wanted to figure out more ways to make money, so I started fishing all these different tournaments and stuff, and I fished a few team tournaments and decided to jump into the BFLs, and I fished a co-angler once, and the deal is I didn't know anything about co-angling. I didn't know anything about that stuff. Well, I jumped in the back of a guy's boat, and I'd practiced hard for that tournament. And I'd found some really big fish, and the guy decided he wasn't going to go to them about 11 or 12 o'clock when we had one apiece. And I was like, man, they're really big ones, and they're like 1 mile that way. And he refused to go. And he was like, if you want to fish as a pro, you just sign up as one. And I was like, okay. And the next tournament, I signed up as a pro and got second in the BFL. And it just kind of catapulted me into where I'm at today. I mean, I started fishing, and I told all my teachers in high school, I was like, I want to go fish professionally when I grow up, and everybody kind of laughed. And I mean, heck, I even laugh sometimes. But and then it all just worked out. I just kept put my head down and tried to outwork everybody. So
it's a good.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, sorry, headphones died. Totally forgot that you're supposed to charge these things. I think I've been running on like 3 days of not charging. But it's pretty cool to kind of see where you went. And then, when was it that you got into the FLW? And it was a tour, right?
Yeah, the tour. so fast forward a little while, I fished through college. Fished at Stephen F. Austin State University there in Nacogdoches, and we had my partner and I, Ryan Watkins, had a really successful role there in college, and I was fortunate enough to make the Bassmaster Classic in 2012, and actually qualify for the tour the same year, fishing the Costas. And so I decided to fish the tour, and so it all worked out. And I fished the tour for, I mean, like a long time. It was like 8 years, and in 2020, I decided to take a different direction. Went into the Bassmaster Opens, trying to qualify for the elites because of the sale of FLW to Major League Fishing. So, kind of changed gears a little bit, kind of redirected my focus, and it's been great ever since.
Yeah, and so this kind of was a great segue into kind of what we're going to talk about for the majority of the episode is these big field tournaments. You know, the opens that you're fishing to try to then therefore qualify for the Elite Series. And I guess really to kind of kick this off is, you know, like we use as an example, Oneida, you had 200 plus boats. I mean, especially on a lake like Oneida, which some people think is a big lake, but really for those who know Oneida, is it fishes very small, especially for what?
It's like the size of a thumb compared to other lakes. It's tiny.
Yeah. And I guess really to start is like, you know, when you know that there's going to be a lake where there's not going to be a lot of space and you know you're going to be a lot of, around a lot of people, I guess really to start is like when you're doing your research, right? You know, months leading up to when official practice starts, you get there and you can actually get in the water. Before that even happens, you're doing your map study, you're doing your research, whatever it's YouTube, historical data, whatever. You know, how much do you factor in the size of the field for that tournament into your preliminary research?
You know, so there was, we'll just use Oneida as an example because I could go on for days about that because every body of water is different. You know, some bodies of water is like in Lake Erie. You know, you can spread out, but you know, we all know that, like on the western basin of Lake Erie, you can't really spread out that. I mean, you can, but you can't. It kind of fishes small to a certain level for catching bigger fish, unless you're just a local and you know all these little secret little rock piles and things. But everybody kind of gravitates to Pelee Island, you know. But in the case of Oneida, what I did is the first thing I did is I made basically a big old loop around the lake, which, I mean, it actually took some time because if you try to run the bank around the lake, you kind of see. I mean, it takes, I think it's like 20 miles long,
it's
basically.
22, yeah.
It's like 22. So I ran like a big loop around the lake just to kind of see everything. And I started realizing where everybody was fishing. And once I realized where everybody's fishing, I decided to kind of stay away from where everybody was fishing. A lot of times you can break down water by just looking where everybody is and not saying, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to go over there and fish where they're at because there's fish there, I'm going to say, well, all these 6 or 10 or 20 boats are here. I'm going to go that way. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. In the case of Oneida, it worked to a certain level. I did end up having to catch them. I ended up catching most of mine out on Shackleton. But the thing that I did that most people didn't, because there wasn't very many boats out there, and it's because it was so windy. I put myself in a position of fishing out in the most brutal conditions, you know, extremely hard winds, big waves, while everybody tried to shelter in coves and pockets and bays and on grass lines, and you know, and I just didn't do that. I went for it. And I think in a tournament like that, you kind of have to go for it sometimes.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think day one it was ripping. I think it was what out of the west.
Both days was just bad. I mean, it was just terrible. I mean, you couldn't have asked for worse conditions for that tournament, no doubt about it.
I think day one was like 15 to 20 out of the west, and then it was just complete opposite on day two out of the east. And
yeah, and it was like 15 to 20 out of the east.
Yeah. Day one was pouring rain, and day two was like colder, and then Bluebird. It was just like you got the whole roller coaster. It seems like it always happens. Like the week leading up to these tournaments, you get like the most stable and amazing weather, and then tournament happens, and it's always ridiculous.
Yeah, Joe's right. It was opposite. I think it was a west it was a west wind on day one and an east wind on day two. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
West,
coming towards.
West Day too.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
You're right. It
yeah.
was coming towards Union, or not Union. I'm thinking of
Yeah.
KU.
What
Towards
is it?
Oneida Shores. Yeah,
Yeah.
they won. Okay.
And it was just nasty out there. I mean, and it was really weird because so what I did at Shackleton, I ended up. I kind of realized I caught a couple nice ones out there in practice, and I realized the potential. And I knew there was going to be a bunch of boats. I mean, you'd go out there on a calm day, and there'd be 100 boats out there. It was insane. And maybe not that many. I'm exaggerating slightly, but I mean, there were still like 40 or
Pretty
50.
close.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bunch of boats. So what I did is I graphed literally the entire Shackleton Shoal, every square inch of that thing, and I tried to find every little sneaky rock pile, one big boulder, whatever it was, and I promise you, I had 500 waypoints across that thing. I mean, it was ridiculous the amount of waypoints, and I kind of had everything lined up to where no matter what direction the wind blew, I kind of had different lineups and drifts and targets that I could hit. And I really think if I'd had a calm day, I could have caught a real big bag out there, or calmer day. And it just didn't work out that way, obviously. But I still had a chance on the second day to catch a really big bag. So I put myself in the potential in the situation to catch a really big bag. I just jumped off some really big ones on that second day. But I still caught a bigger bag on the second day than I did the first day. But, I at least got to see, all that hard work kind of come into play there towards the end of the tournament. But to answer your question, when you get in a big boat field, you have two options. You can either go the other direction everybody else is, but if you do stay where everybody else is, like, so if there's a big group of boats and that's just like where you need to be, you need to break it down way better than they are. That is the number one thing you can do.
So, and then in that case, kind of, is it what you lean toward, like, depending on more on your electronics to kind of set yourself apart and putting in the time versus, time on the front deck and actually fishing, or, how did it, I guess it probably depends on where you're fishing, but like,
yeah,
how do you normally, generally speaking, try to set yourself apart?
Well, you kind of, the one thing about that is you always have to play to your strengths. If your strengths are electronics and reading your electronics and graphing and finding those little sneaky places and paying attention to those small little details, that's what you need to do. And sometimes it's a technique that you're like, you know what? I know not everybody out here is really good at this, and I'm the best at this, whether or not you are. But if you feel like you're the best at that, you need to focus on that one thing. Too many times we listen to Doc talk and say, oh, well, so-and-so caught him on this. Like, for instance, Matt was destroying them on a drop shot at Oneida, and I absolutely couldn't get a bite on a drop shot. And it didn't matter what I threw. I just could not catch them on a drop shot, but I could catch them on smaller, like a Ned rig, a tube, anything on the bottom. And that really was the difference, is I really tried to target the fish that people didn't see on live scope and things like that. The ones that nobody could see that were tucked down in boulders and stuff. And I think that was kind of a part of the advantage. When you graph over it, you never saw a fish. All you saw was some rock. And even when you're looking at with your forward facing sonar, you couldn't see it. So I think that was a big player as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and in these kind of tournaments, right, where there's, you mentioned how, like, when you were practicing, you did a ride around the lake, just kind of more gonna get a gist of like where people are gonna be, right? Trying to, find areas where there's gonna be less boats, and does that mean you kind of like stray towards not really trying to find, I shouldn't say off the wall stuff, but trying to find stuff more out of the ordinary from folks, or is it more of just trying to find an area with less pressure but still doing the same, I guess, generic patterns?
Well, yeah, the deal is that, especially smallmouth. We're talking about a smallmouth lake here at Oneida. Pressure tends to shift fish around, no matter where you're at. A lot of times, like if everybody's fishing that same dock, 9 times out of 10, those fish are going to leave that dock and go to a different dock, or they'll set up differently. They'll set up on the rock behind the dock, or whatever it is. And in the case of smallmouth, if I saw 30 boats on the west end of Shackleton, I went to the east end of Shackleton. And vice versa. If I saw everybody on the east end, I went to the west end. I always tried to play boat positioning and how everybody was positioned on the shoal or anywhere on the lake to my advantage. You know, if I saw a bunch of boats on a grass line that had a little bit of rock on it, I'd go to the other side of the grass line that had maybe not as much rock, maybe it wasn't as luxurious, and people are like, man, that one's just the crappy side. The crappy side a lot of times is where those fish are going to shift to when there's 10 boats on the other side. And that a lot of times, if you pay attention to how people position and how people fish, you can always outperform them by just paying attention to how they're fishing and do something different. And that's what I was doing, as I was really so focused on really doing different stuff than what my competitors were. Because if I just did the same thing, I mean, let's face it, a guy, the guy who won, and he wasn't out in Shackleton, but let's just say, for instance, he's out there, he's forgotten more about Oneida than I've ever known. I've never even been there until this year. And so, I mean, it's just, I had to show up and try to beat the best ones on the lake. And in that situation, I tried to learn everything I could about a 3-mile shoal, and I did. And I feel like if I went back to that shoal, no questions asked, I'd catch him again.
Yeah, the guy that won is actually he's an insane hammer around these parts of here in New York. He just wins about almost every tournament he fishes locally. It doesn't matter the lake around here. So it's to stick with him is a big deal.
A week after he won that Open, he won $10,000 on like a Finger Lake. Was it a week or two later? Yeah, just showed up and whomped everyone. Yeah,
he's rolling the dough locally this year.
Well, and you have guys like that. You have guys that are just unbelievable, local anglers. And Joe actually asked a question. He said, "So timing becomes really key. Then timing is everything in bass fishing. Paying attention when you catch a fish in certain places can mean the difference between catching them and not catching them. I mean, that is a true statement. You know." Let's just say, for instance, here in North Carolina, I know it's not New York or somewhere like that. You know, if I go throw a topwater in the morning, which say I'm throwing a buzzbait, and I'm catching them between 6 and 7. Well, if I decide I'm going to go there at 10 o'clock, the sun is a different angle. Things aren't set up. So by paying attention, I know that's kind of a vague one, but that can apply to so many different techniques and so many different areas. If you pay attention, you're saying, okay, I was at that spot at 7 o'clock and they bit. Well, I went there at 10 and they didn't bite. So if you pay attention to that stuff, it'll really help you out.
Yeah, and that actually, it's a great point because like what Andrew and I are going to talk about in the after this, like when we let you go, is our tournaments this past weekend. And, basically the only efficient pattern I had going was punching grass mats, especially ones that had cheese on it, because this time of year they're going to retain more heat. And literally could only happen until it wouldn't turn on until 10:30. We're getting a guest host from my fiance here. Literally, it would only happen. You would turn on 10:30, 11 o'clock when there was enough sun to actually generate enough heat. But that's like it plays in the timing deal where I literally would waste 5 hours of the day not knowing what the heck to do because I didn't have another pattern beyond those mats. I couldn't catch a fish until it was 10:30 or 11 o'clock. But that's another example of, timing is key. And that really is what I have one of my questions here to you is, how do you, and it's just, this is jumping ahead, we are going to circle back, but if we're on the topic, I might as well ask, when you have your practice and you get into your tournament day, like how do you go about scheduling your day? Like say, maybe it's the last day of practice, right? You got to be off the water, say 2 o'clock, maybe 12:30, you find a really good deal, whatever it may be, right? But you find it at 12:30 and it's like winning fish, but you don't know if that's because it's an afternoon bite. Like, how do you know if you should start there or not? How do you know if it's just I should come back in the afternoon? If that question makes sense at all.
No, that makes sense. And sometimes it's a high risk, high reward in a situation like that. And I've been in that situation more times than I can count. I mean, like for instance, here at Lake Norman, I might find the very best dock in the world, and I might get 10 bites off of it at 12:30. Well, if I fish it at 7 o'clock in the morning, I might not get a bite, but I might. And that's the difference between guys like Brandon Polinick and Scott Martin and guys like me, because they win more tournaments than I do. They make those decisions better than I do sometimes. Some people will call that swinging for the fence, going and fishing a spot and catching them.
It's a calculated risk.
It is. And you got to be smart, though. it's a dock. Like if I had a dock that was so good, I'm probably still not going to start on it because maybe they were on a shade line. You have to look past just the fact that you got bites. You got to say, okay, why did I get those bites? And if you can answer the question as to why, that will really help you. Now, sometimes you can't answer that question. Like smallmouth, why were they on that rock pile? I don't know. They were just living on it. I mean, it's just you don't know.
Why were they gone an hour later?
Yeah, and now I can't see them for like 2 weeks, but now they're back. It is definitely that's the difference between guys who win and don't. The
Right.
ones that can make that decision the best. Truthfully, when it comes to my tournament fishing, I honestly I don't really look at what I did in practice. I really go out there and say, okay, today's a new day. What conditions are I'm dealing with today? What did I see in practice that was maybe similar to this? We'll say, for instance, Lake Norman coming up. You talk about weather changes. We have a massive weather change coming, and that is a massive cold front that's about to start swinging through the next few days. And I think our highs are going to be like in the 70s when it's been like high 90 or high 80s, low 90s, and our lows are going to be in the 50s at night. Bluebird skies. That is 100% different weather condition than we've had the entire practice. So, is my practice irrelevant? No, not at all. I found places that have fish on them. I found spotted bass. I found largemouth. But are they all going to bite with that particular condition? No, absolutely not. And to know that right off the bat makes things way easier because I'm like, okay, if I run there, if I don't get a bite, whatever. It's just the day, and I can adjust as the day goes on. Instead of just fishing spots, I'm fishing the condition. And anytime you can fish a condition, you're always going to be better.
Can you guys hear me okay? Joe in the chat said I had an echo. Am I echoing to you guys?
Right
It was
now, you're
echoing when I
not.
was talking. Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. That's a great segue into Hello Bass. Our buddy Rich Lindgren has a question here, and he's asking are you going to focus on spots or largies or a mixed approach at Norman?
I'm a focus on anything that bites at Norman, if I'm being honest.
That's over a pound and a half.
Dude, I mean, it's just bad. I don't know if there's really a really good way to target largemouth specifically, but I'm just gonna try to catch whatever I can get to bite. I've got fish from 40 foot of water all the way to 4 foot of water, and I'm gonna try to do my best to catch every one of them. So.
Heck yeah. So circling back real quick, I know because I mentioned we jumped ahead, kind of your tournament strategy. But looking at practice, I mean, say, we keep using Oneida as an example, but I guess for any fishery where pressure is going to be a factor with the number of boats, do you try to make it an effort to try maybe try to be unique in your bait selection that you're throwing if you're going to be around people? Or do you kind of still stick to your confidence in what you can, what you've been getting bit on in practice? Do you try to find anything kind of, more in that mindset of no one else is going to throw this, I'm going to try it?
Oh yeah, I do that a lot. I'm the kind of guy that I'm have like 18 rods on the deck, and I'm not comfortable unless I have that many. I like to have a lot of variety. I'm the guy that also wakes up at 2 a.m. and just go ties on a different bait. It's just I think the more open you can keep yourself, the more successful you're going to be on the water. If you get so close, there's certain situations where you need to be closed-minded. When I won at Cherokee, I was very closed-minded. I was so focused, laser focused on flipping a wacky rig, and it worked out, and I ended up. But even then, on the final day, I caught 2 of my biggest fish in the last 15 minutes on a rage swimmer out there off a deep point that I'd found the second day of the tournament. I actually found the fish on the second day of the tournament. So you have to really you have to close yourself off sometimes, and sometimes you just got to say, okay, what am I dealing with? How can I catch bass? And the more successful you can be like that, if you can just say, okay, that point looks good, that dock looks good. Who gives a crap what happened in practice? I'm just going to go fish what I'm dealing with right this second. And quit second guessing yourself. I'd still do it from time to time, but you go look at guys like Wheeler, Jordan Lee, those guys that are just like They're like, oh, okay, it looks like a good topwater day. Even though I didn't get a topwater bite the entire practice, I'm going to pick up a topwater and see what happens, and they end up busting them. It's just those little minor adjustments. No matter what you did in practice, it does not matter. Fish what you're dealing with today, and you're going to be more successful.
Fishing, like you said, fishing the conditions, fishing the moment.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I like that.
I get so moving forward to to tournament day. What is like the biggest defining factor for you and where you're going to start? It's day one of the tournament, and it's the night before, and maybe you don't even make your decision until you're in your boat and you're about to blast off. But what in your mind generally helps define where you're going to start beyond just anglers?
Real quick, I love this question because I suck in the morning because I feel like I always make the worst starting spot decision. So I'm very interested to hear your input here. So the floor is yours.
All right. Well, what I look at, oh my gosh, there was a big noise behind me. I know what it was. When it comes to that, I mean, trying to figure out where to start, there's two trains of thought there. Do I swing? Do I go try to what do you want to do? Do you want to go catch a big bag? Do you want to go catch a limit? Whatever it may be, you have to set clear-cut goals. I firm believer in setting goals when you're on the water. If your goal is to win the tournament and you're there only to win, not get a check, first or last, Ricky Bobby style, then you need to go start on the nuts and stay on the nuts. Now, if your goal is to do well and to cash a check and try to put yourself in position to do well, then maybe you should start on a spot that has more numbers. Maybe you're not going to catch a big, and for a fact you're not going to catch a big one. You're like, hey, all that's there is 2 to 2.5 pounders. But if that's what it takes to get your mind right, then that's what you should do. Always put yourself in the most comfortable position you can. There's people who lose their minds, have incredible anxiety when they don't have a limit at 10 o'clock. And if they don't have a limit at 10 o'clock, their wheels are coming off. They're done. My biggest advice, yeah, I mean, and will 10 pounds help you on Erie? Heck no, it won't. It's not even going to put you, like, they're going to be like, what are you putting 2-pounders in your live well for? But if that is what makes you more confident and that raises your level of confidence, that's what you need to do.
It's got a funny message from Pangrak.
He's such a weirdo.
I guess it was the loud noise.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that the loud noise of Pangrak dropping his Traeger behind you?
Yeah. Goob.
But it's so talking about that, it's kind of cool when you look back on like the different levels of fishing to see how that mentality changes. So like obviously on your local level, very few guys are just going to go for points, right? Mostly everyone's there to either win or whatever, right? They don't really care. It's a local club tournament. And then you get up to like your AAA, like the Opens level or like the Toyotas, right? And you got guys like yourself that are trying, maybe not going for a win every time, but trying to go for points so that you can ultimately make that top level, the elites, right? So you have you have a mix where you have locals that are there that are jackpotting it for the win. Mm-hmm. So you have two different guys going like after two different goals. But then you get to that top tier level where it's kind of almost the same as the Opens, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you got guys that are going out every tournament to swing for a win, and then you got guys going out every tournament just for points to make the Classic.
Yeah, no, I mean it's the same thing. I mean, and when it comes to kind of figuring out what your mindset is, I mean, yeah, when we're in local tournaments, you want to win, but let's be honest, guys. Like, how many times have you been out there practicing and you are 100% not on the winning side, and you know it? You're like, what I'm on is not gonna win. Like, and that actually brings up a good question. Do you go fish for those fish and catch your 18 pounds at max or whatever it might be? And that's, for a fact, that's what you're going to catch. Or do you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go do something completely different. I'm the person, now not in the Opens, but let's just say local level. I'm just going to go do something different. I'm going to treat it as a practice day, and I'm not even going to tie on what I tied on the day before, because if that's only going to catch 18 pounds, I don't want no part of it. Or I might go graph. I might go graph for 5 hours. I've literally graphed for 5 hours in a local tournament during the day. Because why not?
Yeah.
Like, if I go fish that spot over there, I'm going to catch 15 pounds, and 15 pounds isn't even going to get a check.
Right.
What am I gaining? So, but in the opens, I found myself plenty of times. My biggest fish on day one of St. Lawrence was a 5.5, and I never even practiced on that spot. I never fished it, nothing. I looked at my map when I was on a different spot, and I was like, man, that spot looks really good. I wish I'd have graphed that in practice. So I just rolled over there, graphed it, saw a boulder, flipped down there, caught a 5.5 pounder. It's making those adjustments, and that was on day one.
Mhm.
It wasn't on the second or third day, day one. And that's what I do. If I'm not catching them and my stuff isn't working out, I just say, you know what, let's go do something different. Who cares?
Scrap it and run.
Yep, scrap it and run. And the sooner you do it, the more successful you'll be.
I respect that move. And Andrew, I'm kind of curious to hear your input on this, because I'd like to hear your answer to kind of the question that Andrew's put up into the air here. And I think it's something where I've grown, I feel like, at least on talking from a local level, where I used to start with, like, if I knew fish were there, that's where I'd go and I'd hope for a big bite. Whereas now I have the mentality of, if I go to practice and I don't get a big bite whatsoever and I know there's not winning fish there, then tournament day I'm just going to do, like you said, just do something completely different. But I don't have enough of a national, from AAA on experience to know what the heck I would even do on a big tournament level. So, Andrew, I'm actually very curious to hear your input.
Well, it's taken years, literal. Understanding fish patterns, how fish act, how they react, and that's a big deal. The thing that'll get you in trouble when you do that, though, unfortunately, is you bail too fast or you lose confidence too fast. For instance, I'll give you a perfect example. Lake Ontario or St. Lawrence. I rolled into a spot on day 2. Just rolled up to a buoy and I caught a 7-pounder and a 5-pounder with like an hour left, and I had 3 fish. And instead of just staying there, because I caught them within 10 minutes of one another, instead of just staying there and knowing I'm probably going to finish my limit, but I kind of got cold feet, and I rolled to a spot and didn't even make it there because I about ran out of gas. And to just try to catch 2 more keepers, I panicked. I made a bad decision. And believe me, I still, even at a national AAA, doesn't matter. You're going to make bad decisions. You just got to hope that you make enough good decisions to kind of outweigh your bad ones. In that particular event, I made too many bad ones, and it screwed my whole tournament. In the national level, what I've learned is that even that decision, I've got to make it 5 times faster because those guys are that good. I don't care what league you fish. I don't care if it's Bass Pro Tour, National Professional, the Pro Circuit, the Elite Series, no matter what, doesn't matter because everybody's a good fisherman at that level. They all make adjustments fast. They're always on the biggest fish. They're always on the right stuff, and they're always on the juice spots and the whatever spot. You've got to outfish them no matter what. You've got to make adjustments on the fly, no questions asked. And most of the time with extremely limited practice, 2 to 2.5 days, 3 days at most, which I love that because the deal was, like, for instance, if I caught them on channel swing banks where it transitions from flat to steep, for instance, and maybe I got 3 or 4 bites, instead of going and fishing all those, I just go mark them and say, man, that one looks right. That one looks right. How many times have you pulled up on a spot and you said, man, that is a juice spot. They're going to live there. And you put your trolling motor down, you flipped out there and you caught a fish. How many times? 1,000 times?
Yeah.
5,000 times? Why are you flipping on that fish? Or why are you flipping on that spot or casting on it? You know they're there. There's no reason to. You know they're there. So what I learned is instead of, casting on that spot, hey, I'm just going to mark it. I know they're going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's perfect. It is. It lines up with the pattern. It is the perfect spot. Don't make a cast. be surprised, because if you pull up there in the tournament and you don't catch one, you're not going to waste a lot of time. Let's say, for instance, you pull up there in practice and you get 5 big bites. You're like, man, this is the deal. And then you stay there 5 hours the next day and you don't catch but one fish.
Right.
You know, that's happened to me a million times. And what I learned is I was like, you know what? If I put it outside my head and say, okay, I pull up there and I don't catch one in the tournament, fine. I'll just leave in 5 minutes. But if I pull up there and catch a few of them, great. I probably would have accidentally caught them in practice, and then I wouldn't have caught those fish. So the more you can pay attention to that, it'll really make you more successful too. Instead of just going and hammering every spot and trying to catch one here and one there, if you see a spot and you know it's a good one, don't fish it until the tournament.
So that's more of like a fisherman's intuitive sense, but also more of like just a mental thing, right?
Mm-hmm. It is. You got to trick yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we overanalyze. As fishermen, we overanalyze everything. Should this soft plastic have purple flake or red flake or pink flake or whatever flake?
Mm-hmm.
It's green pumpkin. It doesn't matter if it's green pumpkin purple, green pumpkin red, green pumpkin blue. They're going to eat it if it's green pumpkin. The only time that you really got to change is if it's green pumpkin or you change it to white or like a massive color change. Have I seen it matter a little bit in like extremely rare situations? But we always overanalyze as anglers, and we do the exact same thing when we're on fishing spots too.
Yeah, I feel like there's 2 points to that. Is like, as anglers, a lot of us, and myself especially, we almost live by this textbook where if it's either black or white. Like if they're not doing this, then they got to do that. And if they're not doing that, then like they're not there. Which really, fish have a mind of their own. And then there's the conversation of color, where there's people you hear that swear by like exactly what you're saying, right? It's got to have blue flake. It's got to have whatever other color. And then there's people that are really successful, just as successful as those people are. They get really picky with their colors, that only stick to a green pumpkin, a white, and a black and blue, and that's all they'll throw, and they're just as successful. And it's such and I think it comes back to the point we just talked about, where it's literally a mental thing. I think as long as you're presenting that bait the way it's supposed to be presented, and the fish are there, they're opportunistic feeders. I feel like they're going to eat or let you at least know that they're there.
Yeah.
What's your take on that whole color grand scheme dilemma?
I used to be like one of those guys that I had like 50 Shades of Gray. Like I had a ton of different colors of one particular color. But now I'm probably the kind of guy that I'll have a 1 gallon Ziploc bag and I'll throw like 10 different colors of rage bugs in there, and I'll just grab whichever one comes next. That maybe they're all green pumpkin or some shade of green pumpkin or some shade of watermelon or some shade of black and blue. Is there situations where black blue flake is better than solid black? Yeah, if you need a little flake, I guess. But 9 times out of 10, a black bait, is going to be just fine too. There's certain situations where if you're in extremely clear water, it might matter a little bit as far as flake color or shade color or whatever. But no, I don't really pay attention to that stuff, to be honest. I think it's way more important to the technique. Is it a wacky rig? Is it a bait that's falling slow, a bait that's falling fast? Is it those kind of dynamics are way more important than the actual color of the bait.
Right. Okay. I think to add a little context to this, Joe's got a question here too. What kind of fisherman do you consider yourself? Power, finesse, electronics, bank beater, etc.?
I don't know. I actually had somebody ask me that exact same question today. They said, "What would my number one what could I take to the table that I could beat everybody with?" And I don't have the answer to that. I don't have one thing that I'm just like, this is me. My least favorite technique in the whole world's flipping, and I won a tournament in 2019 flipping. So I guess if you want to call me anything, I'm the guy that has 18 rods on his deck, and I'm willing to do anything to catch a bass.
Junk fisherman.
I'm a super junk fisherman. I would say I lean more finesse though. I'm super comfortable. I mean, I caught 3 of my 5-pounders last week at St. Lawrence on 5-pound line. I'm not afraid to go to 4 or 5, 6-pound line at all. Like I fished the Forestwood Cup at Lake Murray with 4-pound test. And I think it actually made a humongous difference because nobody was catching them where I was, and I was the only one catching them. Is it really sketchy and scary to catch a fish on 4-pound line in the biggest tournament of your life? Yes. But you can't win it if you don't hook them. And that's my mentality. I'm the same way when I'm fishing docks. I'll throw over all the cables and all the docks and everything that I got to throw over to catch a bass, and I'll figure out how to get them out eventually. Or I don't. Otherwise, I don't get that bite. So you can't be scared. But that's just always been my mentality. Is like I'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah, and so this is actually a really good point because our buddy, Andrew fished with him last weekend. I traveled the Northern Opens with him. Our buddy Destin Marion, we were talking about this because we heard some chatter at the ramp of people saying, he goes, I think I need to go down to 6-pound test. I think those smallmouth are seeing my 8-pound when really the whole idea behind their pound test is those smallmouth can't really see your line.
No.
You're using 20-pound tests, they can't see your line.
No.
And Andrew's talked about this, Andrew Full. I keep referencing both of you.
Right here.
It's not whether they can see your line or not is when it comes to the importance of line size. It comes down to how your bait acts with that line size. The thicker the line size you have, the less action on the bait you're going to have. When you go down in line size, the faster your rate of fall, the more lifelike your bait is going to look in the water, which is why Andrew Upshaw here was saying 4-pound test was probably because it just made those fish commit better because your bait had more lifelike action. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, and the other thing that you didn't mention that it absolutely is a deal is your line actually makes noise under the water too. The more you drag your line under the water, the bigger the pound test makes more noise and moves more water. The smaller your line diameter, it moves less water. It's a lot thinner, and that is that's a big deal. And Joe just said he caught 40 pounds on 15-pound test. Hey, hats off to y'all guys. Where I was fishing, I couldn't do that. It just wasn't. I just couldn't get bites. I mean, I literally at one point where I caught the 5.5, one of the 5.5s on 5-pound line, I saw that fish and I dropped on it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes with 8-pound test. Drop, drop, drop. Let it sit in front of it the whole time. And when I switched over to 5, first drop, ate it. I mean, I'm not a scientist, and I dang sure didn't weigh in 40 pounds. But it definitely, where I was fishing and the situation where I was at, it made a difference. And there's been situations where it absolutely worked, no doubt. So, I mean, you just got to keep an open mind. You got to fish what you're confident in. In that situation, I was more confident in 5, unfortunately.
It's an interesting equation. So, like, obviously, you were catching yours on 5-pound test. Joe at St. Lawrence was catching them on 15-pound test. He was throwing a bait casting setup. It's interesting to see what fish will commit when, and timing. Timing. They say timing is everything. And this circles back to a question here from Jordan LeClaire, and it's talking about what about fish that you could see on the graph that you throw the kitchen sink at and you can't get to bite. And there's some people in that equation that say, well, they're probably not bass. Well, there's times where I've seen guys go and they drop their camera down if they have like an aquaview or something, and they are bass, but they won't commit. And most people say, well, bass are dumb. A bass is a bass. They're not gonna, they're gonna eat if it's in front of you. But there are occasions where they're not going to eat, or at least they won't eat for what you're doing. When you find a situation like that, like every other angler has been presented with, what is your approach? Do you just leave those fish to go find biting fish, or do you, put your head to the grindstone and try to figure out a way to catch them?
Well, it just kind of depends. Live scope has really taught us that there's way more fish down there than we ever knew. And sometimes it even teaches us there's way less fish down there than we ever thought. Sometimes we're like, man, there's got to be 1,000 of them there, and there's like 25. But like it really helps kind of teach you how these fish relate, how they set up, and things like that. And in this situation of trying to figure out, should you stay or should you go? I mean, all depends on how they react to my bait. If I think that they're reacting and they're just not eating, I'm going to stay there longer. If they're just down there and they don't want anything to do with my stuff, I'm out. Because you're not going to trick that fish. If it is constantly turning away from no matter what you're throwing, you're not going to trick it. I always go to greener pastures in that situation. But if I see them reacting, if I see them chasing it, maybe then your color's off. Maybe then your technique is off. Maybe you should throw a slower sinking bait or a faster sinking bait, whatever it may be. If you pay attention to those couple things, it really makes a difference. And Joe, actually, I was on the lake. I was out there around Galoo Island in that area, and on the northern part of the lake around Canada. I wasn't in the river very much until the second day. And it's funny, talk about making decisions and that kind of stuff. Joe kind of reminded me of something. I've never been to St. Lawrence River until this particular tournament. Not one single time. I showed up and started fishing. I didn't get info. I just went fishing. And, I knew I was kind of behind the 8 ball to a certain level. I knew I wasn't going to have all the best spots, and I didn't know all these little secret rock piles. I'd kind of done a little bit of research, but not a lot. And I found a spot in the river that I thought I could catch 20 pounds a day, but I didn't go there because I found a place in the lake that I thought I could catch 25 pounds a day. And, I don't know the best term for this, but I was not swinging for 40th place. That's not why I was there. Would I have finished better and caught 20 pounds? Yeah, because Matt Pangrak caught him on that spot. And I didn't give it to him. He found it too. We both found the literal exact same stretch on the St. Lawrence River, the exact same drift, like to a T, and he caught 20 pounds a day off of it. I legitimately had the chance to catch 25 pounds a day. I had them on the first day, and I had them on the second day. And, I had some unfortunate things happen. I lost some fish. I lost some fish on 8-pound test. I lost some fish on 10-pound test. I broke off like 1 on 5, but I just jumped off some. I had some pull off. I missed some with my hand, and they pulled off. I weighed in 2 2-pounders on day 1 and 3 5-pounders. On day 2, I weighed in 1 2-pounder, a 6-pounder, or 1 almost 7, and a 5-pounder. I mean, when I caught one, they were a 5+ pound fish. And if I could land everything, I was at 25-pound day average. And I could not have done that in the river. Not at all. Not even close. So, I mean, talk about taking some chances and swinging for the fence. I probably swung a little bit too hard, but I still have done the same thing again.
That's
Great
really
Lake smallmouth.
Yeah, pretty much what you boil it down to.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think we had one more question here, and then we'll start wrapping things up. Kevin Gagne, I'm probably butchering his last name, but he asked if you ever ask yourself what would Panger do. I don't know if this is an inside joke or not.
What would Panger do? I know what Panger would do. I'm gonna throw a drop shot, and if that doesn't work, I'm gonna throw a drop shot, and then maybe a wacky rig. No,
I think I'm in the same boat as Panger.
Yeah, dude, Panger's a great finesse. I actually think he's a better finesse fisherman than me. And it's just yeah. I don't really have to ask too much, but yeah, I know. I pretty much know how he's gonna fish. And just like Lake Norman. I practiced a few more days than he did, and I knew before he got here this would be a lake that fit him, and I think he'll do really well here because this fits him to a T. The way you're going to catch spotted bass here, you got to use your live scope. You got to, you're catching suspended fish. He'll do really great.
Sweet.
So
Hopefully he does.
oh
And
yeah, he'll do good.
He had a great finish at St. Lawrence. He's rolling good for the points for.
Or he'll have another Iaconelli meltdown like he had at Oneida, which if he does that again, I'm gonna end up having to film that one. So
Yeah, that and if he keeps his prop intact, unlike the
oh
St.
my
Lawrence.
gosh, he had kind of a nightmare situation for him to actually pull it out like he did at St. Lawrence. I was very impressed. I mean, between his shift actuator and his prop situation, his cavitation plate, and just him being who he is, I mean, he's 100 miles an hour in every direction. He just does this all the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I feel that.
Yeah, I mean, he's funny.
If he's still in the room, it was actually pretty funny when we got to practice with each other that Sunday. And I got the vibe of that when his shift actuator went out. And we finally got the motor to start running. And we were going back towards the ramp. And he goes, I might have to fish all weekend with my motor on the whole day. And you can kind of see he was playing out the variables before he even got back to the ramp. It was funny to see. But also shows how prepared a guy like that is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They're thinking about these things before, the process even starts rolling. But
yeah, you have to always be ready for just about anything, especially out here, because but the thing is, you gotta always stay glass half full. If I can leave everybody with one thing, just because bad things happen, because bad things, unless you have a horseshoe up your butt, bad things are gonna happen from time to time when you're on the water, and it's how we react to those bad things and how we push forward past those bad things is what actually makes us better anglers. Not dwelling on a lost fish or a bad cast or whatever's going on in your life. When you're bass fishing in a tournament, you got to put everything out of your head. You got to focus on the next cast, and you just got to keep just going forward and have fun too. Because let's remember why we're there is because we enjoy catching bass, and it's not always about winning first. Sometimes it's about just having fun. So.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things for people to remind themselves when they're having such a crappy day is they're there to have fun. If you're not having fun, then what the hell are you doing there? And exactly. I know for a lot of people it's a living, but I mean,
you still have to have fun.
Yeah, it comes back to that concept of why waste a minute of your life being miserable. Make sure you're enjoying the ride.
Yeah, and I do that too. I'm sitting there preaching about how you should be. Heck, I have those days where I'm just like, this is. Why am I here? What in the heck am I doing?
Your turn to
And then you're like, oh, I caught one. Oh, we're all good now. We're all better. Everything's good. But yeah, you have to always just stay focused. Say glass half full. So.
Yep. Well, dude, we're not going to keep you for too long here. We got one question left, and then we'll let you go because we know you got practice and a big tournament coming up for you this week. And we appreciate you taking time this week to obviously get on the stream here with us and chat with us. We learned a lot tonight, as I think a lot of the viewers and those tuned in have. And our last question for you is one we asked everybody that's new to the show. And Andrew, I feel like we haven't asked anyone this in a while.
Yeah, this is nice.
It feels like we haven't had someone who's been new to the show in a few weeks. And that is if you get to sit down and have dinner with 3 different individuals, have a steak, have a beer, who are you going to invite and why? And they could be anybody. It doesn't have to be the fishing industry. They could be alive 1,000 years ago. They could be alive now. Who are you going to invite and why?
Well, one for sure, because I just think he's like the funniest human ever, is Kevin Hart. I just think he's like, I like surrounding myself with positive, funny people, and he is absolutely both of those things. Man, that's a really hard question because so many people.
This is the best part about it is we don't.
Because
it's on the spot.
Yeah.
It's the brain pumping because we always get messages afterwards. We're like, "Oh, I should have said this person."
Oh yeah, no, I definitely would be that person. Yeah. Man, y'all can't do that to me. Y'all can't put me on the spot like that.
We're just getting the brain turning for the tournament. We're helping you out.
That's dirty. Let's see. I probably have my brother there. I mean, I just really enjoy my brother. I don't get to see him as much as I'd like to now. So it'd be nice to have a beer with him. And my wife. I never get to see her anymore. I mean, dude, I'm about to be on the road for 8 straight weeks, and fishing on the road, you get to see your family. You know, I don't get to see my family near enough, so I'd probably have my son there with me too. So actually 4, because I think my son would laugh a lot at Kevin Hart because I do too. And actually, we'll say number
Andrew
5,
Upshaw's family and lunch with
Tim the
Kevin
Tap
Hart.
Man, because I think he's like the funniest YouTuber / Warzone player ever, and he is hilarious once again. So I actually have 5. There you go, 5 people.
So he's actually, I don't know if he still is. Right? So we talked about this briefly offline, and for those who have never watched it before, you should. All of Andrew's social media is down below in the description, but he used to stream playing Call of Duty. It was like once a night or once a week at night or something like that. He used to do it.
Yeah, I would actually. For a while, we were doing like 3 to 4 nights a week. I mean, we were doing it a lot. It was awesome. My wife actually was a big proponent of that. She pushed me really hard to kind of just open my mind a little bit. And the reason we were streaming was to help connect with the younger generation. One big thing that I've always done is try to find ways to connect with young people who are aspiring anglers. And that is the perfect time to sit there and have a chat, talk to people, and play a video game. And not video games aren't for everybody, and that's perfectly okay. But the thing is half the people in there don't even play video games. They didn't even know what was going on. All they want to do is talk fishing, and that's all we did the entire time was talk about fishing. And so right now I'm kind of in a limbo because my internet's awful in East Texas. But we will be back at streaming probably this winter. I'm hoping whenever Starlink comes out, Elon Musk needs to get that stuff rolling because that would make life so much better for a situation like mine. So.
Yeah. Well, dude, as we mentioned, it's a great crossover of, one of the first things I asked Andrew when he joined Andy and I offline was if he found crossover. And he said that he really did. And that's something that's really cool. I mean, that's another example of truly growing the sport of fishing. And that's something that's pretty awesome. And you should be proud of because that's super creative. And I don't think literally anyone else is doing that.
Nobody is, at least at the level of which I was fishing and fishing, whatever. There are a lot of regional. You'd be surprised how many regional anglers, local anglers, and people who just watch bass fishing like to play video games. It's a way that we all connect in a different level, and that's what I've always done. I've just tried to connect on people at their level. So, to correlate, I was the kind of guy in high school that I didn't just sit at the same table at lunch. I just went and sat with just different tables every day, just to kind of, meander with everybody. I just like to know a little bit about everybody. And I think the same way with video games, I kind of like to hit people at different levels and, just kind of see what everybody's about. So
you're not the guy like talking trash to little kids on Call of Duty?
Oh, no, I do that sometimes.
Everybody does that.
You're not that guy, man. You're not that guy.
Gotta release stress somehow.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes you gotta shoot people in the face on a video game. So.
Yeah. Well, dude, I just want to say we really appreciate you taking time out of your week this week, especially when it's tournament week, to come on here and teach us all, Andrew and I and all of the viewers and those obviously listening to this episode on MP3. We do appreciate your time and obviously hope to get you back on here soon and hopefully after a very successful open season.
All right, thanks, guys. I really do appreciate y'all having me on, and I can't wait to be back.
Yeah, man. Well, good luck to you and Panger this week. Hope you guys give them hell, and obviously we'll be tuning in, rooting for you.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Good luck.
See you. All right.
Bye. So, Andrew, I think that means we need to start playing Call of Duty again.
Yeah, could you imagine like a serious dangler Call of Duty stream?
That would be kind of funny. But no, it's seriously like his way of when he was streaming, because I tuned into a bunch of them. Because actually I used to be kind of like I guess what you call a quote unquote gamer back in college. That was how I used to waste my time in the winter when I didn't have work to do or whatever. And So I did enjoy the stuff that Upshaw was kind of coming out with, and to see when you tune in the stream and he's playing Call of Duty, he would attract that crowd who like that video game lifestyle that would come over and watch because he's streaming. But he's also talking about fishing because you'd have these folks that subscribe to his channel because obviously they follow his career and his skills, abilities, his knowledge, and it's a way for them to pick his brain while he's playing video games. And it's super easy to talk while you're playing video games about a random topic because it's a way where you can focus on one thing but also still have a conversation. And it was a really cool way to cross them together. I think that was super creative, and I think it's something that literally, as we said, no one is doing it. And that's a very unique way and very, I guess, 21st century way of growing the sport of fishing versus just personal selling and traditional marketing.
Right.
So big props to that because that was genius, and I hope he gets his internet back to that again. Maybe it's something we need to make a Call of Duty and start streaming with Andrew. That used to be something I used to do all the time. My buddies and I was one of those kids when Fortnite was like the brand new thing, like in its inception. We were the kids playing it in college. But
you got to have fun sometime, right?
Yeah,
you just have to live a little.
But dude, so for folks tuning in, we appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. So a heads up for Friday's episode. We have Buck Mallory from the NPFL coming on the show. That'll be a fun one getting him on. And also it's just I don't know if we're going to bring it up in Friday's episode, but something that we like to bring up now and we have brought up in recent, but I think something that should be brought up again is it's pretty crappy to see what those anglers are kind of going through with the loss of 2 anglers in the past few weeks.
2.
That's one unheard of. 2, it's pretty crappy and it's really sad, especially those families. But at the same time, it's cool to see the community that the NPFL has built with seeing how the anglers have kind of come together and not really even just NPFL, but really seeing the fishing community as a whole. Really, really sad. But either, on the flip side, to not try to be negative here, I'm really excited to get Buck Mallory on the show. Excited to talk to him. Andrew and I have a tournament on Saturday. It's our last one for the regular season before the championship event. So we're hoping for good results there. We have a video coming out tomorrow, as we mentioned in the introduction, of Andrew and I fishing the tournament.
You going bike on the water?
Yeah, Andrew going crazy. No, he'd really go crazy. Everyone has those moments when they're trying to skip docks. But here's one question I have for those tuning in, and also for those who might be listening on MP3 or tuning into the YouTube at a later date. When do you guys think it might not even matter? But when do you guys think we should be posting fishing content? Do you like it posted in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening? Let us know, because honestly, that's something that we're trying to figure out and we're kind of struggling with is times to post so that you guys can best receive our content. So whether it doesn't matter, let us know to say, hey, it literally does not matter. Or if there's a time where you prefer to watch YouTube, let us know and we'll post at those times. But either way, we're just trying to best get our content out to you guys so that you guys can consume it, learn the things that we're learning, and then also watch Andrew rage at docks.
It happens. So, Bailey, Chris Desmore has a question up there. I don't know if you saw it. He had a question about he had problems with 6-pound tests at the St. Lawrence with zebras. Went to 8-pound, but I used 6-pound on Erie. He sets the hook a little too hard. So should he go to a lighter rod because of his hook set? What do you think?
Yes, but also I guess maybe it depends on the technique that you're using and how you're using it. Like if you're using 6-pound on a Ned rig and you're dragging over shoals, it's going to happen. But I feel like if you're dropping straight on fish with 6-pound test, you're fine. Because like as long as you keep that line taut, or even if you let that line slack, you're not going to get in those zebras as much. And if you do, it's just going to break off your weight and not your hook.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm a big proponent of a medium action rod, but with a softer tip, especially when drop shotting, maybe even what brand line? Oh, Gamma.
Well, I think he might be asking Chris is what brand line. But I think
yeah.
I mean,
That's a big thing too.
Yeah, straight up. I mean, complete transparency. But Andrew and I both use Gamma.
So
Tatsu. Okay. Sorry, Joe. We're gonna have to disagree on the middle brand here. That is a no-fly zone anymore.
when Tactical first came out, it was amazing, and it's like slowly gotten more brittle. I don't know if people aren't buying it because of the P-Line brand, but if you pick it up, it breaks super easily, unfortunately, and just can't use it anymore. But I mean, drop shotting 6, 5. Sometimes I'll go 5. Sometimes I use 7. Sometimes I use 8. But it's all situational based. Sunline, Chris, 7. FC Sniper, 7 all day. It's about as thin as a lot of other brands. 6. The 6 will be like 5 or 4 in other brands if you use FC Sniper. But when you're dragging, like in a current situation, a lot of times the weight makes a difference. So if you're using a teardrop, that's going to get hung up, dragged through zebra mussels and rock more. If you go to more of a cylinder style drop shot weight for dragging, it's going to bounce over it a little more and be less hung up and more resistant to getting those nicks on the line.
Yeah, so Joe was mentioning the line or time for videos. So thank you for the input on that, Joe.
I kind of like that. We should do some lunchtime launches.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
But yeah, no, seriously, dude. Brand I think really does matter because there's some lines like in the general scheme of things, if you're just like fishing grass or basic drop shotting, it really shouldn't matter. There's some lines that absolutely suck, but when you're niche fishing like Great Lake smallmouth where you're going to be around a lot of structure, especially stuff where you're going to be expecting to lose or break off certain baits or whatever have you, it's very important to be using the right equipment. I think, for general fishing, there's a lot of places where you can get away with, using whatever, right? But I think there's fisheries where you need to have the right equipment or literally you're not going to be successful unless you get lucky. And I think the Great Lakes, the St. Lawrence River are those exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, especially when it comes to line, I think line is the biggest thing. I guess I should take that back. I corrected myself. I think there's an equation that's very important. And I think this is one that you and I have teetered with a lot this year in conversation. And we've gone back and forth and made adjustments with, and that's
For example,
line.
Me and Bailey were fun fishing on Erie back in August. And
We made a video on this actually.
I was using 6, and I don't want to quote how many fish I caught in front of Bailey. And I was like, dude, put 6-pound test on and you'll get bit. And I think literally your first cast after changing down to 6, you got bit. Like
it was almost instantly. A 6-pounder too.
Yeah, like instantly. And I was like, see, I told you. Like
I do. So this is actually in the video. If you guys go back into our archives, literally it's just Great Lake smallmouth fishing, like throwing a flatworm. We're literally throwing the same bait, same hook, same size weight, same braid, line size, well, except for the leader line size. And this goes back to the point where we talked about the difference between 6-pound and 8-pound. It's not because those fish can see the line. It's because the bait can react and behave differently. That lighter line allows that bait to have more action than the 8-pound. And like Andrew Upshaw mentioned, apparently there's noise, which is something I learned tonight. The bigger the line, the more noise and drag through the line. That is wicked cool.
Deal.
Yeah, I don't see so this is an interesting conversation. That's a different topic for another day. Is like Mark Sexton, who is a fish biologist for Berkeley, designing baits with them, with the whole power bait and Maxent, and it's something I learned from him is like there's a small decibel range that fish can actually hear in. And I wonder if a lot of what people attribute to sound is more just vibration that they feel through their lateral line. Because he mentions how it's like that's their strongest sense beyond scent, which is a super interesting deal, especially for current fish. But it's we're going to go down a whole another rabbit hole if we start talking about that. But it's crazy to see how small change like that, especially summer fish. And I think you can agree that's like the biggest time for variables to be at play versus like an early spring or a late fall where they'll literally eat whatever you put in their face because it's time to eat.
Honestly,
yeah,
I know we're going into fall now, but I'm honestly looking forward to next summer already because I have some ideas of what I want to do. I'm actually going to go. Gamma makes a touch, which is a very subtle drop shot line, like a super finessey line. I think they make a 4 and a 5 pound test.
Mm-hmm.
So next summer, when it gets real tough and grimy in the summer and I can't get it on 6, I'm going to start downsizing to see how many more bites I get. I don't think a lot of people do that. So it's just another advantage. And then becoming comfortable with it. Because when you're fishing 4 and 5 pound tests for 5 to 6 pound fish, it can be quite uncomfortable. So, I mean, that's just something that I personally want to challenge myself to do.
Yeah, and that's a really great point.
Yeah.
And talking about that day where that's something really critical that I learned was how important line size could be, definitely in, especially the late summer. Because I've always been a proponent of throwing 8 pound, didn't need to go down to 6 pound because if they're not going to eat 8 pound, then I'm just going to move around and find fish that will eat 8 pound. But really, that's not always the case. And the thing I learned that day beyond just how line size can be so critical is when you're fun fishing, obviously you want to, have fun. You want to catch a lot of fish. But if your goal is to learn, like my biggest goal in fishing, every time I'm out there, I have one goal is to always learn and take away one thing. And that was the biggest thing is that you need to literally, if that's your goal, you need to take the time, whether maybe it's one small variable of changing your leader size, or maybe it's changing the color of a chatterbait blade you're throwing. Or something completely different. Just something either major or minor. If you're changing something to experiment while you're fun fishing, at least for it to take like 30 minutes to an hour to experiment off the wall crap. And that's actually kind of crazy how much you'll learn when you just try to do something completely wacky. So that's something I learned that day was leader line size and how critical it can be. And I'm a big proponent of 6 pound. If you know you're around areas that you're not going to break off, why not throw it? It might mean one extra bite that you're not going to get with 8 pound.
I mean, there's been days, and this is kind of wonky on my behalf. There's been days where I'm like, you know what? I know I should be getting bit on a drop shot on this grass edge or like grass cuts or whatever. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go down to 6 and just to see if they'll bite it. And instantly you get bit and you're like, oh boy, this is terrifying because I got to get them out of this grass. But on a drop shot, you get them pinned so good if you have the right hook set angle that the grass doesn't even matter because you can actually use your reel to pull those fish with the grass to you as opposed to the rod and breaking your lines. So you also have to challenge yourself in learning how to fight fish with different line sizes as well.
Heck yeah. Well, dude, do you have anything left for the folks before we sign off here tonight?
Check out our YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe and let us know what you want to see because that's huge. The more you tell us as viewers what you guys want to see, the more we can adapt and get content out that caters to you. So that's the way we want this to be, is adaptive to what the viewers want, what everybody wants to see. So let us know, please.
Yeah, and I think something kind of cool. So obviously with work, working PR for Gunpowder, I get to work with some pretty badass clients at Pure Fishing, Johnson Outdoors, and one thing that my buddy over at Johnson Outdoors, huge shout out to Luke Loverick, is coming soon. We're going to have a buttload of Humminbird and Minn Kota hats that we're going to be able to give away to viewers on Monday Night Lives. So if you guys keep tuning in, coming here soon, we'll be able to start picking winners to win some pretty sweet merch. It'll be shipped your way. By just tuning in, we'll pick a random winner. We'll probably make like a rule here, but it'll be super simple. But either way, we love when you guys tune in, especially the live sessions, because you guys think of stuff that Andrew and I don't think of in the time, make points that we don't think of in the time. And that, it helps us learn, hopefully helps you guys learn. And obviously, that's the Serious Angler brand. So we appreciate you guys when you guys do that. And obviously we want to give back. Speaking on that, we are in the midst of trying to get our sponsor team, those who are affiliated with the podcast, prepared for 2022, and one of the biggest proponents we have is giving back to you guys. So keep sticking with us, and hopefully we'll have some pretty damn cool stuff to give away to you guys in 2022. We have some pretty lofty goals for this brand and where we're going to take things, and you guys are a big proponent and on the forefront of that. So we appreciate you guys, and look out for that video tomorrow. But obviously we'll have a show this week with Buck Mallory. Deacon's got an episode in the works, and we will see you guys next time.